Okay, so welcome everyone to this special webinar, productivity webinar for leaders entitled 3 Secrets to Effective Delegation so that you can get all your stuff done and still be home at a decent hour, presented by yours truly, Naftali Hoff. And I'm so glad that you spent some time or that you made the time on, I'm sure, a busy day to be able to participate. And as I often tell leaders, I often tell people who join me in any type of work, this is really an investment in yourself, an investment in your team, and hopefully an investment in your future. Like we sometimes need to slow down in order to gear up. And that's what this presentation is all about. It's about finding ways that we can delegate better and ultimately through that, be able to get more done, be there present for people in our lives, be present for the people at work, right? So often we get busy and we can't even be present for people. So this is an important topic. I thank you for making the time to be here. And before I go much further, I want everybody to know that there's something really meaningful happening on the back end of today's presentation. And so this is why you're going to want to stick around until the very end. Number one, the webinar that I'm presenting now, I don't want to gloat, but I will tell you, I've spent a lot of time prepping for this. There's a lot of useful information, practical tips that you're going to be receiving in order to get more done. And I want you to be aware that there's a special offer, or actually a series of offers, but a primary offer at the end of this webinar exclusively for attendees. So you should know, in the event that you cannot make it to the very, very end, one of the participants already told me that might be an issue. I will be sending out a follow-up email, but for now, definitely try to be with me to the very end, because there's nothing that compares with doing this live. And that offer is not going to last for very long. So the sooner that you have access to it, the better. And we're going to be running for another hour and change. We should be done by 3:15 Eastern. Okay, so let's roll. First thing that I wanted to ask you is as follows. Now, I'm assuming that everybody here is in school leadership, because that's the group that I sent it to. Now, if you happen to be a leader in another space, that doesn't mean that anything we're going to share would be less relevant, but the examples may be more school oriented. Okay, again, leadership is leadership. I do leadership coaching. I've been doing it now for about 9 years. I moved into it exclusively with experience in school leadership and no experience in the business world. Meanwhile, I coach business owners. I run mastermind groups for business leaders. So it's not something that requires necessarily a deep knowledge of a specific industry or type of organization to understand that leaders today are super busy. Leaders today have tremendous responsibilities. And so what we need to be focusing on is how to help leaders like you get more done in less time. And of course, the best way to do it, like almost anything you're doing in your organization, your business, is to leverage the power of others. So let's first start with a few questions. And you can, by the way, please use the chat comfortably here to respond to these. In fact, it would be great if you do. Question number one, are you completely overwhelmed at work, putting out fires all day and not getting a moment to concentrate on the many things on your desk? Another question, are you wary of asking your colleagues to do anything because they're too busy, they'll resent it, or maybe they just can't do it right? Another question, do you feel like you're neglecting your health and your personal life for the sake of just keeping things together at work? And that, by the way, is a big one. In fact, just a short while ago, before getting on this call, a colleague of mine texted me to ask me if I would have the ability to do a workshop on stress management for a company, because stress is becoming an ever-present and increased reality for professionals in all areas. And finally, do you feel that the way things are going right now is simply unsustainable and something has to change? I'm guessing the answer is yes for you for at least one of those, if not for multiple. Otherwise, you wouldn't be with me today. So let's move in. But again, please do use the chat. Now, the good news is that, first of all, don't give up, okay? Because there are answers, there are solutions here. If you've struggled with managing your time up to this point, it's not your fault, Because, I mean, how often, I don't know what your degree is in, I don't know what kind of training you've had. Very few institutions, schools of higher learning of any kind spend meaningful time, or any business training, all the technical stuff that we learn doesn't prepare us for leadership, and it doesn't prepare us specifically for time management. So if you struggle with that, it's not your fault. You've just never been taught. Or maybe you've had some bad examples of people who always were the chief cook and bottle washer, and they were just doing it all themselves. And that was the paradigm. That was the model that you were given all these years. If you're worried that you're never going to be able to get control of your time, put those fears to rest, right? We're going to deal with this. And I'm also happy to share with you that you can get control of your day, start to manage your time so that your time works for you and not the other way around. And that's a critical piece. You know, we spend so much of our lives reactive, responding to things, this ping, this email, this phone call, this whatever. It's time for us to recognize that we are in control if we choose to be. And that's a very empowering thought. So what's my goal for today? Right, I'm a former educator, so everything has to have a goal and objective, but I think we all understand why this is important. So I'm here to teach you how to delegate your work to others so that you can, number one, get more of the right stuff done, right? We could be working, we could be super busy, but that doesn't mean we're focused on the right things. So it's critical to get more done, but more of the right things done. That's number one. Number two, it'll reduce stress, because if you're delegating work to others, it's not all on you. And finally, number three, to leave the office at a decent hour every day to spend me time, we time with loved ones. Okay, now I'm just curious, please use the chat to respond to this. Which of these three, if I could deliver on any one of these three, which one would be most valuable for you? Is it number one, the ability to get more done of the right work, of course? Number two, the ability to reduce stress levels for yourself and for others at work? Or is it number three, leave the office at a decent hour? In fact, your answers could be all three. You could just put them in the order of greatest significance. So if it's 3, 1, 2, you would just put the numbers in the chat in that way. But please do use your chat vigorously, regularly, so that I can get your feedback and, of course, target my comments to to those outcomes that you seek. So I am checking. I don't see all that much at the moment just yet. Okay, one response. Number two, thank you, Barry. Looking for other responses as well. Please keep them coming. Which is the one that if you could get more of that done? Jocelyn, thank you. Looks like stress has taken the early lead here. I don't call horse racing or anything like that, but definitely has the start on this one. And if anyone is uncomfortable using the chat, that's fine. Bill, okay, it looks like you have them in the order in which I wrote them. All right, anyone else, please feel free to weigh in. In the meantime, we're going to move ahead. And I want to tell you that while we are going to dive into the delegation, the secrets, all the things I talked about, I'd be lying to you if I told you that that'll be a full solution, because there's so much to time management, there's so much to productivity. The very best way to get control of your time, to learn how to delegate your work, to become more organized and get more done, is through productivity training. There's no question about it. I actually run productivity trainings, group coaching, things like that. And the best way that I can offer you right now, at least in terms of ease of access to productivity, where you could be learning in an on-demand fashion, is through the Impactful Productivity Masterclass, which is everything you see over here. And allow me, please, for a moment to unpack it just a little bit more. So this masterclass has 5 primary steps. Step number 1 is plan it, which is planning the process in advance to get clear on task, process, and outcome, right? I think Yogi Berra is the one who said that if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. But if you're planned and you're clear, you're purposeful, and you have direction, share it. That's we got to involve other people, meetings, communication, and of course, our topic today, delegation. Right? When you share, you win. Do it in many ways is the most important, because that's about getting the work done. right? Removing distractors, and we have so many of them, optimizing your time, optimizing your energy. Step number 4 is sustain it. Develop a mindset and self-care approach that ensures continuity. Sometimes we get super motivated to do something, and then that motivation wanes, and then we're back to where we started, right? And we actually feel worse because we weren't able to achieve what we set out to achieve. So sustaining it is a critical piece. And then, of course, anyone here in a leadership role, leading it, right? You got to be able to motivate your people. You have to manage their stress levels, as we talked about earlier. All of these are important. All of these are part of the masterclass. I'll come back to this later and let you know more about how you can access this very powerful offer. In the meantime, just a few words about me. Some of you have been getting my emails probably for a while, wondering who is this guy? So I am a school leader and educator turned executive coach, an organizational consultant. I work, by the way, as you'll see in a moment, a lot on productivity, on delegation, the topics that we're focusing on now. I'm an author, proud author of Becoming the New Boss, and actually soon to be author of a second book on the topic of productivity. I'm a presenter, a keynote speaker, and finally, now that spring is upon us, a part-time gardener. Those are some things, and of course, a family person as well. I shouldn't say of course, but I'm the proud husband of my lovely wife and father of 6 children. What do I do? Most leaders struggle to manage their workloads and get home at a decent hour. I help them delegate and be more productive so that they can get more done with less stress. And I think, if we're being honest with ourselves, that's what all of us want. More work in less time, so we have the time to do what really lights us up, whether it's family time, our hobbies, giving to community, you name it. Or frankly, just doing more of what we already do and doing the right parts of it. Right? We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but if you could spend all day doing the work that lights you up, where you know that there's a direct correlation between your efforts and, quote, success, however that's ultimately defined for you, rather than doing the minutia, rather than doing the things that weigh you down, rather than doing the things you're not good at and stress you out. I mean, I think all of us would call that a win, right? If you agree with that, please somehow let me know. Just chop in. Am I speaking your language here? Am I on point, right? Are these issues, are these topics relevant to you? Are these outcomes something that you want? Please use the chat. A simple yes or no would be great. Okay, just something to let me know that I'm actually not only being heard, but that the message is resonating and on point. Okay, thank you, Bill. Looking for more comments and feedback as well as we move forward. So very quickly, my story. I have a longer story, so to speak, as far as my career, but specifically the part that's most relevant here is that I'm a former head of school of a 360 student independent K-8 with limited resources. And I arrived in the school, it was right on the back end of the recession, and the recession was very much still being felt in the community. We had shortages of staff on so many levels. And by the way, again, as Yogi Berra might say, is deja vu all over again, right? Staffing shortages are a huge problem, right? So many people are dealing with, whether it's because of the unemployment opportunities, people not sort of getting used to not working, not wanting to go into schools. So many principals in particular, or business leaders, people are telling me, my mastermind groups and other places when where I'm talking to them, we can't find enough people, enough teachers, enough support staff, enough employees. Just curious if that's a problem for you as well. Staffing shortages. And that's what I encountered. The administration was small, totally overwhelmed. And we had a board of directors that were very eager for us, despite having been named a blue ribbon school of excellence, we had a lot that we were trying to accomplish, and a very ambitious board that wanted to see that happen. And that, of course, created a lot of stress. So how did I start to figure things out? The answer is, number one, it was very pragmatic. I knew that I could not succeed otherwise. We just didn't have enough manpower for me to do it all myself. Was not going to happen. I'd be burning myself out on both ends. That wasn't a recipe for success. So I started to slowly figure things out. I started with some early wins, right? Some easy things on the front end, which I could give to somebody else. I'm going to share with you a specific example soon. And I began to master the process. Again, I went to the school of hard knocks for this one, even though I've got 2 master's degrees and a doctorate. And for those counting at home, rabbinic ordination as well. I never learned anything about time management, productivity, or delegation. It was all about walkthroughs and observations and assessment and curriculum and whatever else, all the things, the traditional things, the technical elements of school leadership, but never this stuff. So I had to do it on my own. I went back to school, which I figured would help me as well, which it did. But for the most part, this was self-learning through trial and error. And I have since taught the system that I developed to audiences all over the world, physically and over the web. And that's because this is such an important topic. I remember years ago, I was invited down to Orlando to speak to Orange County Public Schools, and they invited me to talk to their assistant principals, of which there were over 350 in their system. And it wasn't anything about the technical skills of running a school. It was all about the soft skills. It was all about relationships and communication, the stuff that schools don't teach us. And that's why this topic is so important, because it's relevant, it's practical, it's the things we really struggle with, and all of us need help here. Okay, so over time, I would come to use delegation to manage my meetings calendar, right? I had somebody else do that for me, to provide more regular oversight and feedback to teachers because I can get into classrooms more often, to be able to institute a school-wide student behavior program, which again, I was the driver behind, but I certainly wasn't the engine. There were others who stepped up, others who helped me achieve that goal, to upgrade our technology, which was another important area, to increase my donor interface to make sure that we were raising sufficient funds to cover our budgetary needs as a school, as an independent school. So all of that was on my plate, and I needed to use delegation to achieve that either directly or indirectly. And that just allowed me to be more focused and utilize my time better. So how does this apply to you? And again, I'm just asking you to be kind enough to share in the chat. We've got 1 through 4 here without the numbers. Perhaps you feel like your head is all over the place, number 1. Number 2, maybe you are overwhelmed with all that you must get done. Number 3, maybe you feel like your personal life is suffering as a result of so much on your plate. Or number 4, you're worried about falling farther and farther behind in your work. So again, I'm curious to know which of these 4 would you say is most relevant to you? Thank you, Barry, for your quick response there, right? Some of us are just, we've got so much to deal with and we feel like a chicken without a head sometimes, and we don't know where to prioritize, okay? So the good news is not to worry. I have a simple solution that is going to get your work, school, and personal life back in order and fast. Okay, this is important, right? Because we have to be able to solve this. Otherwise, we're not going to accomplish. And I think, I actually heard it again yesterday. It's attributed to Albert Einstein, but I'm not sure he actually said it, that lunacy is doing the same thing day after day and expecting a different result, right? If we're going to do the same thing every single time, how could we possibly expect a different outcome? That's not going to work. So we got to figure it out, and we got to figure it out fast because it's not getting any easier. All right, let me tell you a couple of quick stories that I think will help you. I like to call them delegates to accelerate, because I know that when we delegate well, we accelerate. We get to work faster, smarter, and better. So what do we have here? David is one example. He's a small business owner, but it's still relevant, right? What was his problem? He was working overtime. He never took vacation, and he was working, as they say, in the business rather than on the business. And the result, he wasn't scaling. He was so busy. He was actually doing the work, and he needed to be able to find more people to do the work so that he could be out there. And let's talk about what solutions we found. So I worked with David to reposition existing personnel and to bring in somebody in the mid-level, a manager, and that manager would manage those individuals on David's team. And David would be out there more, meeting and selling in the relevant markets where he was most active and where his business needed him to be. That's one example. Pearl, who's a school principal up in Canada. So her problem was that she could not get home at a decent hour. heard a live presentation that I delivered on the topic of delegation. She reached out to me. She told me, I cannot continue. I'm going to have to resign. I'm on the burnout freeway and there's no exit, right? And she was really, really struggling. So the solutions we came up with for her was, number one, to do a task analysis to help her to focus on the right task. We're going to talk about that more. Not every task is designed in the same way. Not every task really relates to you and your work. And by the way, in just a moment, you can even do it now, I'm going to ask you to please write either D or P in the chat to indicate to me which problem would you say you better relate to. David's problem of just work, 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 or Pearl's problem of the fact that she also was working very hard, but in her case, she didn't seem to trust other people, and she was somewhat of a perfectionist, and she felt she needed to do it all herself. And we began the process of identifying internal people that could assume some of those tasks. And it was not simple for her, but we worked on it, and she worked on herself. And the result was that Pearl was a much relieved and rejuvenated leader for a school that desperately needed her to be showing up every day, enthusiastic, upbeat, positive. So again, D for David, if that's more your scenario, P for Pearl, if you relate more to her and her story, just out of curiosity. So I'll be watching the chat as I continue to move through. I want to make sure that we're able to complete our content in time. I know how important it is for us to be able to accomplish it in the framework that I shared with you. Okay, so Bill, you see it in both. I appreciate your honesty. Okay, Marka, thank you. It looks like, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, by the way. If I didn't, I apologize. But either way, thank you for sharing that as well. All right, so here's Pearl's feedback. Okay, thank you, Jocelyn. Through Naftali's expert guidance, I learned effective delegation strategies and increased my on-task time almost immediately. Most importantly, I was empowered to get off the micromanaging treadmill. Isn't that interesting wording, right? I don't know how many of you think you are or are not, but anyone who's a perfectionist, I would imagine, tends to micromanage when it comes to their work, right? Their work, the work of others, really, and clarify with real awareness what needed to be done and by whom, enabling me to successfully achieve the goals I set for myself. I continue to benefit from this guidance long after the training. So this is real. This is a real person with a real problem, and we got real results for her because she was committed to the fact that she needed to delegate more and find new ways with which to focus her time and her energy. So you're about to discover the 3 secrets. Secret number 1, why leaders, must delegate, but why most don't, right? We know sometimes there are things we know we need to do and we still don't do it. We need to exercise, but we don't. We need to change our diet, but we don't. We need to study more or be more present for family or whatever, and we don't. So why do leaders have to delegate and why many still don't? Okay, number 2, what leaders should delegate and what they shouldn't. Just because I say delegation, it's not a magic wand that you wave over. Now all of a sudden you cover everybody with pixie dust and they're all doing the work and you're out sipping a pina colada somewhere. Some things you still have to do. We're going to make that important distinction. And number 3, how to delegate even when you don't have someone to delegate to. So again, using the chat real quick and out of curiosity, which of these 3 secrets most piques your interest? Which would you like to have the answer to the most, or at least have that secret sort of, that curtain lifted and the demystification process here? Okay, so we have 1 vote for number 2, looking for other responses as well. And all of these, by the way, are very relevant, very practical. In my full delegation seminar, I walk participants through 13 steps to effective delegation. We're not going to hit on all 13 today, but some of these pieces are in that discussion and certainly very important. Okay, it looks like 2 is very important to people. I saw a vote for 3 as well. Let's move on. We will hit on all of them anyway, because of course they're all important. So number 1, by the way, are you ready to get started? Right? Have I sufficiently convinced you that this is a topic worth rolling with? Thank you, Barry. That is awesome. I really appreciate your feedback. Boom, there it is. We're going to get started here. I hope everybody else is with me because buckle on your seatbelts, right? We're going to do this and we're going to do it right. All right, let's go. So secret number one, why leaders must delegate and why most don't. Now, I want to tell you something. When I ask leaders, I would delegate more. I think the sentence usually is, I would delegate more if, and I get all sorts of interesting answers. And you're welcome if you want to give us a quick stab at it. If or but, right? What is on the back end of that? I would delegate more, and then they give an excuse or a reason, right? We'll call it a reason rather than an excuse. But truthfully, it feels ultimately more like an excuse than a reason. Why do you think most leaders don't delegate more than they currently do? Is really the question here. And the answer, in the interest of time, is coming up on the next slide, but I am watching the chat carefully and I do see, it's an issue of trust. Okay, what else, everybody? What other things are on your mind? Just type away. I'm going to flip the screen, but you don't have to look at it. You can see if your answer will appear on the slide. Not that your answer is wrong regardless, but I will tell you the answers that I get most often from people when I survey them and I ask them about why they don't delegate more. Okay, here are, thank you very much. It's a couple of great answers so far. Let's go. I would delegate more, but. So here we go. Now tell me the one that you feel most is your answer, right? What's your justification for why you don't delegate more than you currently do? Number one, it takes too long to delegate things. So I just do it myself, right? The training, all the work involved, getting people caught up to speed. I have that, and we'll talk about this later on when we talk about VAs and others, but I've recently brought on 2 new people for my coaching practice, and getting them caught up to the specific things that need to get done. It takes time, right? And I have time I need to devote to other things, as we all can imagine. Number 2, I don't have the right people on staff to task things to. Number 3, how can I delegate if I can't trust my people to do things correctly? And again, this may be borderline perfectionism here, but it's an issue. Number 4, it's so hard to give up control. I need to have my stamp on everything. And when I delegate, I don't. Number 5, I just don't know how or what to delegate or who to choose. It's like, I just don't have the tools. I don't know where to start, right? So often we get stymied. It's like paralysis by analysis. So we sort of look at it, but we don't really know where to go with it. Number 6, I have a hard enough time doing my own work, let alone supervising others. And again, this is the same issue, right? If I'm so busy working in the business, how can I ever find time to work on it? Or in the organization, how can I ever find time to work on it? So we have to sort of be able to pull ourselves back, but that's what people are struggling with. Number 7, my people resent being asked. They have enough, or they're not expecting this, and they're just going to resent me for asking the question. And again, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to vote. Tell me the one that you would say is your biggest obstacle. Number 8, they won't take the job seriously. If I give it to them, they'll just, treat it in a manner that doesn't justify what the task demands. And finally, number 9, it's a boring job, so I just do it myself. And again, I'm very curious to see your responses as to what it is that you would say is your biggest reason to not delegate. Okay, so I'm looking at some responses here. 5 has made it twice. Okay, one vote for 6, for 8, for 9. Okay, let's take a look at number 5 for the moment, right? I don't know the how, the what, the who, right? These are critical pieces. Okay, we'll talk about those more. Anyone else, please share your responses. In the meantime, let me share with you the truth. All right, so despite these reasons, despite the answers that you see over here, let's go back for a moment because 6 got another vote, right? It is hard enough to do your own work, let alone other people's work. I get it. All right, it can and it must be done. And I'm going to tell you why, right? More and more principles. And again, I'm going to use the term principles with the understanding that if there are leaders here in other industries, it's as relevant to leaders and owners. More and more principals are working longer and longer days, right? We all thought, I'm just going to tell you what I thought, but I believe everybody would agree with this, that when technology rolled around, so to speak, or as technology has evolved, every time something new comes out, we just see it as a time saver, right? The ability to send out emails rather than regular mail, the ability to communicate through text or mass email rather than individual phone calls. All the things that we feel that our phones and devices are saving us time with would all be boons for us. And we could work partial days and then just, hit the beach or whatever's of interest to us. But the reality is we're working longer than ever. Our days are harder. Sometimes we're working weekends just to keep up. And that leads to issues of burnout. It causes people to want to change their careers. And by the way, what's happening now is that, especially in the world of education, leadership is being depleted. The pipeline is depleted. You can't find teachers. You don't have people, who want to deal with the responsibilities of leadership. It's a different topic. It's a big topic, and it's a topic that has to be addressed. But the bottom line is, this is certainly not helping, right? When we're overwhelmed and we don't feel like we have control over our time, it's yet another reason we say, enough's enough. I can't do this anymore. And that's why we have to change what we're doing in order to produce a different result. Otherwise, we'll just be at the same thing day after day, wondering why life isn't getting better. Okay. And the good news is you can do it. Again, you just need someone to help you learn what to do. And that's why I'm here, to tell you what I've learned, share with you some secrets, share with you some tips, practical strategies. And by the way, at the end, I'm going to also ask you to please share with me your biggest takeaways. I'd love to have 3 from each participant, but maybe write them down as you go. What are the biggest takeaways? And by the way, a takeaway could simply be that you're not alone. A takeaway could be that you're not the only person struggling with this. A takeaway could be that that this is something that's important and has to be done, right? Those are also takeaways. It doesn't all have to be about practical strategies, though I would want you to have those as well. Okay. Why must leaders delegate? Right. Number one, you simply cannot control every activity, right? You've got an enterprise, you've got an organization, you've got a school. There's so much going on. One person just can't control it all, right? There's a limit to the workload of any one person, no matter whether you're a machine or not, right? You're limited. And as you get bigger and bigger, more specialization is necessary, right? We can't be great at everything. We can only be great at certain things. And we want to try to surround ourselves with people who are great at other things. If other people are doing the same things day in and day out, they typically become masters of it, right? We all know that the ultimate goal for people is to become unconsciously competent. I'm so good at it, I don't even really have to think about it all that much, right? If you're driving a car, that's a classic example. But sometimes you can complete reports relatively quickly. You can, hammer out an email really fast and do it well. I'm not talking about doing things quickly for the sake of speed. I'm talking about speed and quality. And that only comes because of the ability to specialize and to focus on specific things. And we live in a world of increased specialization, which is why there are people who are great copywriters and people who are great salespeople and people who are great at marketing and at branding and all sorts of different services, coaching, because when you become really focused at something and do that every single day, you become excellent. And the very best people out there are always looking for excellence. They're always looking for not perfection, but excellence. Perfection is the enemy of good. Perfection is the enemy of progress. But excellence is something we should all be aspiring to. Okay. Now, what are some other reasons to delegate? It allows us to put a project or a key responsibility on one individual because somebody has to take ownership of it. Maybe it's a strategic plan. Maybe it's an upcoming campaign, like a capital campaign, a fundraising campaign, some kind of advertising or whatever, right? And that also, by the way, allows you to focus on the big rocks. You're probably familiar with Stephen Covey. The example, I don't know that it's his initially, but he popularized it, where you can't put in the big rocks once you've got all the other stuff in the jar, right? So you first put in the big rocks and then around it, you layer in the smaller rocks, the pebbles, the sand, the water, and it all starts to fill in around those bigger items. So those bigger pieces might be what you focus on as a leader, and then you give other people things that fill around it. That's just an example. You may choose to delegate to help other people grow. You want to fill the pipeline of leadership, just like somebody invested in you probably once upon a time. You want to remove the bottleneck, right? Not every decision has to go through you. And you also want consistency of process. If you're doing the same thing, like we talked about before, day in and day out, you become really good. And that consistency serves your clients and your company or your organization in the very best way. Okay. So that's secret number one. Why people don't do it, those 9 reasons we listed. Why must you do it? For the reasons that we mentioned. If you don't do it, it's too much for any one person. We can't develop that level of specialization, and we really can't bring organizations to the next level. Secret number 2, what leaders should and what they should not delegate. All right. Many people think delegation is all or nothing, right? Either you delegate and delegate everything, or you don't delegate at all. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a mistake. There's a truth here. And the truth is that there are clear rules that govern what we should, as well as what we should not be delegating, right? And what are those? What are those components? You see them right over here. So on the left side are the things that you should be trying to delegate. If the task is routine, it doesn't require a tremendous amount of thought. It doesn't require a tremendous amount of variation. People typically don't need a lot of guidance, okay? Or they've developed enough over the years where it's now routine for them. By the way, you may be familiar with something called situational leadership, which is taught initially by Ken Blanchard, the idea that different situations require different leadership responses. And there's a continuum to leadership. You really only can delegate to people once they've achieved a level of mastery that also is accompanied by a level of self-motivation. And that therefore would make those tasks routine, doable easily because they have achieved a level of success. Doesn't mean you can't give the responsibility to them at an earlier point in their development. It just means at that point you're dictating or directing more, and eventually you're supporting, coaching until you get to the point where they could be fully delegated to, but it is a process. Number 2 is the task interesting. If you give people boring work, you can imagine what the result is going to be. Doesn't mean you can never delegate it, but it's not necessarily the ideal thing. Number 3, if someone can do it better than you, right? And the answer oftentimes is yes, they have certain skills or expertise that they can or already have developed, and you could take advantage of that. Is it a task somebody else would enjoy? Maybe you have somebody, for example, who loves math, loves numbers, and really is good at whatever math-related task you have to deal with, and maybe they'd just be a better choice. Is it good for someone's development? We talked about this before, right? Filling the leadership pipeline was how we referred to it, but maybe somebody needs to develop, and this task will help them. It'll make them more confident. It'll help them develop better connections, whatever that looks like for them. Is it time consuming, right? In other words, if it's taking your time as a leader to do it, you probably want to give it over to somebody else. And by the way, from a purely financial standpoint, even if you're working in a nonprofit like a school, you still want to think like a business person as it relates to your time, right? You are likely the highest paid or of the highest paid people in your building. You want, therefore, that your time should reflect your salary or your piece of the pie, however that's ultimately defined. And so you have to be able to say, my time is high leverage time. My time has to be for the things that are most valuable. And therefore, usually if it's very time consuming, the answer is not going to be that this is a valuable task for me to be doing. And then finally, if I'm not personally responsible for it, if I'm personally responsible, I should not be delegating it, as we will see in the other list. Okay, so the other list, which is going to parallel what we just read, if the task is boring, if it is a crisis in which needs an immediate response, if it's ill-defined, it's not really clear what needs to happen, or it's confidential, if it's a matter of providing praise or perhaps reprimand or redirection for somebody who's not performing, if it involves planning, all of those would be reasons not to delegate, at least not carte blanche. Maybe you will delegate, but you have to first add some layers in order to make it approachable, right? Better define it, help the person plan it. By the way, John Maxwell talks about the 10-80-10 rule. And without getting too much into the weeds with it, he in effect, imagine like you're flying an airplane, right? So the hardest job for most pilots is takeoff and landing, right? Getting the plane to a cruising altitude and bringing it down to landing, those are the 2 hardest parts of the job. The rest of it, The plane is, for all practical purposes, on cruise control. All right. And many projects are the same way. If you have a team, once they know where they're going, they can bring it pretty far along. And then you want to just make sure that after you've helped them take off, you want to help them land. So we call it the 10-80-10 rule. And the 10s on the front and the back end of any project are where the leader is most involved. And that 80% in the middle, there are moderate check-ins here and there, but not an in-depth, regular participation and analysis. Okay. And again, I hope you're writing down different ideas, different strategies. There will be a recording sent, but I really want you to be able in this conversation to tell me what it is that you feel is most valuable. And in fact, I invite you to do that right now. Pick one thing that you've heard until this point in time that has really resonated with you, something that has really been an eye opener, that you wish you would have known 5, 10, 15 years ago, or even last week, and that you could move yourself forward with it. By the way, I'm just going to kind of take a moment here on this matrix. You're probably familiar with the Eisenhower matrix, maybe not by that name, but again, a Stephen Covey classic, the idea of trying to compartmentalize your tasks based on the urgency and the importance, or the non-urgency and non-importance. It kind of runs that gamut. And you'll notice that these are two parallel matrices. They're really the exact same thing, just with different names. The one on, actually, neither of them are officially listed as the 4 Ds, but they're also called the 4 Ds. It would be do, defer, delegate, delete. Okay, neither of them listed exactly that way. They both say do, plan, delegate, and eliminate or limit, but it's really the same idea. Do are things you got to deal with right now. It's a crisis. It's urgent. Okay. And you've got to deal with it this minute. You've got a meeting with an important person in 10 minutes, and you've got to focus in right now because you haven't even written an agenda for that meeting. Non-urgent and important is where leaders want to be most of the time. You are best served in the planning component, building relationships, developing opportunities, being strategic in your thinking, working on your systems, taking a step back so you could take 10 steps forward. That is where you should be most of the time. Now, where does this tie into what we were talking about? Quadrant number 3, urgent and not important, stuff that's got to get done, but it's not important that you be involved with it. And we often refer to them as phone calls, emails, distractions, interruptions. But a lot of the tasks that happen on a day-to-day basis, I believe, also fit here. They're not urgent. They are urgent, but they're not important in the sense of something critical that has to happen right now, or something that requires your specific set of skills. And if you could then delegate it to somebody else, what does that do for you? It gives you the freedom to hang out in quadrant 2, which is where you want to be, like I said, for most of the time. And of course, quadrant 4, we want to get rid of completely. Those are things that are just busy work or trivial or time wasters. So productive people spend little to no time in quadrant 4. Okay. Now, another way to think about this is what we call the must, should, could pyramid. The must is at the top for leader. At the bottom, it's a must for others. And then you've got the space in between. So let's go from top to bottom on the left side, and then we'll look across to the right as we go to see examples. Okay. So a leader must do, what's an example of that? Maybe deal with personnel issues. We talked about praise, reprimand, things like that. Strategic planning, the leader's got to be involved there. What's something the leader should do but could involve others as well? Reports, budgeting, matters that are important to company function but don't necessarily require the leader to do it completely. Number 3, leader could do, but others could also do it if given the opportunity and, of course, proper training. Examples would be many, right? There's so many things that could fit that description. You probably have a bunch in your mind right now. Others should do, but I'm on the 4th one now. Others should do, but leader could help in an emergency. That might be routine decision-making or matters of customer service. So you might be familiar with Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. It's a very well-known book and really touches on many aspects of time management. And Tim describes over there that, I forget the price point, but in effect, he empowered his customer service reps. I think it was a a vitamin or nutrition company, something related to supplements, that anything under X amount of money, let's say $400, you as the customer service rep have complete autonomy to determine what to do. And he felt that that was worthwhile based on the fact that it would free him up. They didn't have to come to him for every little decision. And it allowed him to do other things, to build the company, and ultimately to be a master of his time. And then the things that others have to do. That might be answering the phones, bookkeeping, clerical. The bottom two could be a little bit of a gray area depending on who's available. Obviously we've had a lot of sickness and pandemic issues and other things that have really reduced our support staff. So sometimes you got to have all hands on deck. I've got a client now in the insurance industry who was just, so depleted for a variety of reasons with personnel that he went back to what he was doing when he first started the company, which was providing all of the services to so many of his clients. And that's not something he should be doing now, but sometimes circumstances require a different approach to your time and to your energy, because you just need to keep the business afloat, or you need to keep the school running. And so that is something, there's the strategic, there are the ideals, and then there are the practical realities. And we have to be able to dance between the two, understanding what we really want to get to, which of course are those ideals. All right. And there are ways with which we could do it. There's a delegation worksheet. By the way, this is part of the masterclass as well. One of the many, many tools that are available. You write down the task, you ask yourself the question, can this be delegated? And you figure out to whom. Now you haven't solved it, but at least you're on the path toward delegation. And when you go through your list, if you have an activity log and you're logging all the things you do every single day, and you do it, let's say for 2 weeks, you will have a very good sense at that point of the kinds of things you are typically doing. And then you start the process of asking, what here can be delegated? Okay. I was asked to flip back for a moment to the previous screen, but I'm not sure if this is the screen because I didn't see when the comment was typed. So if the person who just wrote that, if I got the right one, all right, good, I got it. All right, so I'm just going to hang out here for a moment but continue to talk on the other points. So bear with me for a second. Yeah, so that worksheet gives us a framework for at least starting to have the conversation. What could be delegated and to who? And once we start that process, we can then be more mindful of, where to take it. But first we got to know what it is. All right. So we've had secret number one, which is why leaders, principals in particular, need to delegate more and why many of them don't, with the different excuses that we talked about. Secret number two, which relates to, let's go back to it for a second so we have it in front of us, what leaders should delegate and what they shouldn't. It's not everything. And I think this was probably the most important slide as it related to the do's and the don'ts of delegation, picking the right kinds of tasks. And then secret number three, which a number of you mentioned as the most important one for you, is what do you do when you don't have the right person, right? It's a big one. Right? Delegating sounds wonderful, but if I have nobody to delegate to, the whole thing sounds like a moot point. So what do? All right. And many people think that even though I don't have, I know what I can delegate. I've got that list. I completed it. Everything's wonderful. I got column number one over here on the left completed. I've got number two in the middle completed, but I don't have this one on the right completed because I don't have anyone to delegate it to. So what do I do? And the answer is you have options. So if you literally have no one, you very well probably need to be hiring. Right? You want to use those, those primary tasks, those different things we've talked about as, the skill set, right? The job description. These are the tasks. These are the things that we need as a company, as an organization to have done on a regular basis. Craft a job description around those tasks and put the word out that you're looking, or maybe consider a VA, Fiverr, Upwork, many of the other options that you have online for short-term help and support. The same client I referenced before has a whole back office that he's developing with people in Asia, and they're providing support so that the front office, the people who interact with the clients on a regular basis, have support and have people that they could delegate, things on further to move it through the pipeline, so to speak. The other option is if you already have people, you may want to consider reimagining their current workload. Maybe they have under the radar skills that you aren't tapping into. And let me tell you an example of that. A woman who is, I referred to her through this adjustment to her name as Lori, not her real name, but close. And Lori was what was and is a wonderful person who was the office manager at the school and really did a ton of things to help us function effectively, did it with a smile, really, really great person. But I knew that there were skills that she had that were not being utilized. I learned about her training. She actually had a degree in marketing, which was not being utilized well. We had no proper admissions director in our school, and my assistant head of school was handling that, which was totally not appropriate. But she was doing it because there was nobody else. And so I promoted Lori. Lori took on other responsibilities. I paid her something additional. She worked harder than before. Not that she wasn't working hard, but she worked longer hours than ever. And as a result, we as an institution benefited greatly. And the administration had some major chunks of responsibility off of our plates. Not that we didn't check in with her, but we knew that she was going to take the primary lead on getting these things done. I had mentioned situational leadership earlier, so I'm going to quickly touch on it briefly again now, but you'll notice over here the continuum from right to left as it goes up and then back down. So at the beginning, when a person needs a lot of direction and they're highly motivated, right? So you see on the bottom, their competence is low, but their commitment is high. That's typically what happens when people get started, right? They're super eager to do the work, but they don't know how, so their competence is low. As you move from right to left, the competence starts to slowly increase and the commitment starts to decrease because now they've hit their head against the wall a bunch of times. They're not as motivated as they once were. So you move from directing where do this, do this, do this, to coaching where you start to make it more reflective and asking questions and getting them to own different elements of the job. Then you become more of a cheerleader and you support because their competence is starting to increase. Their commitment is a bit variable still, but it's getting stronger. And by pushing them, by supporting them, by giving them what they need, you're moving them still in the right direction till you finally get to delegating, right? Delegating is the last of the four. And that's where the competence is high and the commitment is high. So it is a process. It's not instantaneous, but if you do it and do it well, you will reap the benefits over time. You have to be able to play the long game. The same way if you change your diet, you won't see a change in your cholesterol levels right away. If you change your exercise routine, you will not see changes in your body for a period of time. Most changes that matter to us the most take time till they kick in, right? But once they're in place, it's a totally different, you're playing a different game, right? You're living a different life. The quality of your life, using the health examples from before, is totally different. When you're exercising regularly, you're eating better, you're doing the other things to sharpen the saw and keep yourself well. And it's the same concept, the same principles when it comes to people management and project management, like what we're talking about today. Building knowledge and efficacy. So if a person that you're delegating to, you have to ask the question, what do they still need to know or to learn? And how will I get that information to them? Maybe it's a course, maybe it's a mentor, maybe it's a coach. Maybe it's something else that they need. I have to figure out what that is and help them practice. And practice is critical for all the educators on the call. Practice is what ultimately helps us to deepen our knowledge, our skills, and ultimately our automaticity. And we do that through what's called a gap analysis. Where are we now? Where do we need to be? All right, what is this person capable of doing today? What is he or she in need of doing down the road? And what skills need to be provided to help that person? Is it more practice? Is it feedback? Is it a course? And you set up an action plan. And that's how you get from where you are to where you need to be. It's reverse engineering your outcome. It's the same thing in education, right? So if we say that our graduates need to graduate with these skills, or at the end of grade such and such, students should be able to X, Y, Z, or even on a given day in a given class, right? So we say, given a 40-minute lesson on, I don't know, the American Revolution, students will be able to, and you list the skills, you list the knowledge, right? So then you have a clearly defined learning objective. And the same is true for any type of training that you do. Okay, so we've covered the secrets. We've talked about why most leaders must delegate and why most don't. We've talked secret number 2, what leaders should be delegating, as well as what they shouldn't. And we've also discussed secret number 3 is how to delegate even when you don't have someone to delegate to. And I'm hopeful that all of this has been helpful to you. And I'm hopeful that all of this has given you insights on things that perhaps you've been thinking about, but never quite figured out, certainly haven't mastered. So here's my question for you, right? We had an hour together pretty much thus far. We'll have a few more minutes, but who wants to take things to the next level, right? Who's interested in really becoming a master over your time, really understanding productivity at its core, not just other people through delegation, but yourself, proper planning, being able to communicate like a real leader does, being able to do more of the right things, sustaining your work over time, being a leader of impact, right? So I'm telling you now that the place to get it in a way that is, I think, the most digestible, that will fit your busy schedule, is the Impactful Productivity Masterclass, which, by the way, is an on-demand offer, which I will talk about. It's a virtual masterclass that gives you that opportunity. You can attend from the comfort of your home or your office. And it's all about helping you to gain control of your time, to prioritize what's most important, to learn how to delegate even more than we've discussed. Because again, I'm sitting here, quote, lecturing, right? I'm just talking, but you're not practicing yet. And the practice is ultimately what internalizes all the learning, reducing stress, protecting your time so that you could be with others, yourself, do the things that light you up. And the 5 steps is what we talked about are inside the course: planning, sharing, doing, sustaining, and leading, right? Getting the process very clear in advance, sharing it with those that need to hear it, getting them on board, removing distractors, optimizing your energy, having a mindset that allows you to stay after it day after day after day, and motivating people while understanding their strengths and understanding your own, frankly, as well as your blind spots. All of that is covered in this masterclass. I'll go through it a little bit more to unpack those specifics. So when we talk about planning, we're talking about planning the process in advance. Remember, stay with me because I've got a special offer for you. Plan the process in advance because you took the time to be here, and I want to reward you for that. Plan the process in advance to get really clear on task, process, and outcome. That's identifying the right task. Not every task is the right one. Managing and prioritizing your to-do list. Sometimes we have a to-do list that runs from here to the other side of the state, right? We have to be able to manage it. Set positive, actionable goals, things you could actually utilize as motivation and as focus. Organizing your workspace. Some of them have a mess that is so significant it impedes our ability to be productive. And of course, to determine what's needed. All of those are important. Module number 2 is about sharing, involving others through meetings, communication, and delegation. Schedule regular standing meetings, what we call morning huddles. Plan for regular communication with your team and with individuals. Implementing and utilizing collaboration software. A lot of the things we're doing as projects are available. If we have proper software, we are sharing it in real time and people know what's going on and they know where they fit. Right? I was talking to somebody yesterday who's thinking of working with me as a coach, and he runs a construction company and they don't have an effective CRM, and they're duplicating all of these efforts, which are just draining their time unnecessarily. Delegate, a big one, as you know. Monitor and review processes to make sure that we're on the right track. Module number 3 is all about doing the work, removing distractors, scheduling, and then blocking out your time. Going all in. Don't get distracted through multitasking. It's a big no-no. Knocking out the 2-minute tasks that if you just get them off of your plate, you'll be able to focus more deeply. And then finally, maintaining high energy levels so that you're able to work and sustain it throughout the course of your day. On the topic of sustaining, learning to say no, focusing on excellence, not perfection. We've talked about that, but we'll go deeper. Break often, right? Sometimes we think we have to sit and work and work and work. Breaks actually help us get more done if we use them correctly. Self-care, sleep, exercise, nutrition. We've hit on all of those in the past. We go deeper in the masterclass. And then using your commute wisely, reading, listening to audiobooks, finding ways to fill yourself with the knowledge, with the skills, with the purpose that makes a huge difference. And then finally, module number 5 is all about leading, building passion, right? Passionate people work harder. They're more motivated. They don't get stuck as much as other people do because they believe in what they're after. They understand the purpose of things. It helps you to manage stress better with your people. And that's an ebook that I'm going to be talking about soon that I make available for anyone who participates as a free offer. Number three, understanding and leveraging your leadership style, right? We have personalities, right? We don't all come to leadership in the same way, same background, same approach. Some people are more empathic and like connection. Some people are more solution oriented and want to just jump right in and get stuff done. And it's not good or bad. It's just who we are. It's how we were designed. And we have to be able to use that in order to achieve the outcomes that will serve us best. Setting people up for success, right? How do we figure out what works for them, what feeds them, what drives them, and then finally using values as our North Stars, our compass to achieve more. Those are the modules. And that is what we go through in that masterclass. And here's some feedback. I'm not going to read it all to you because it's a lot and you can see it all yourself. I'll just read from Julia here on the left. I attended the masterclass and was impressed with how thorough the information was. As a result of this class, I feel much more confident in my ability to get more done. And hopefully you all see from this single webinar how much information has already been shared, how much more is awaiting you by participating in this special masterclass. So this works for leaders who want to get more, want to learn, how to better manage their day so that they can get more done. For leaders who would benefit from stronger organizational skills. Some of us are just so good at what we do, but our organization is not so great and we need help. It works for leaders who feel like they're not getting enough free time for family or to do the things that they love. And by the way, the number one reason why people don't get started is because they say they don't have time. But the irony, and you could even say the humor, the joke of it all is, and this is really the good news, is that what I'm offering you is the exact opposite in a positive way, meaning to say I'm giving you a solution to get more time. So you feel like you don't have the time, so you don't take a step forward, but the solution will offer you more time on the back end by participating because you will be so much more wise and strategic. Think about it. If you're driving from here to a place an hour away from you and you're doing so without a GPS and you say, I don't have the time to look up how to get there, and you just hit the road. We all know how stupid that sounds, right? Of course, you want to take a few minutes, get your technology set up, at least take a map, something where you have an idea of how you're going and what's the fastest way to get there. Nobody would do it the other way. But so often we show up to work every day and we don't have a plan and we don't really know how we're going to be more productive than we were yesterday. And we keep doing the same thing and hoping for a different result, which, as we've already said before, is not a good strategy. So let's review it quickly before we wrap up. This is what you're going to get if you participate in the masterclass. And I think this number here is actually a pretty conservative number, close to $3,000 in value when you consider all of the things that this offers. Now, again, this is the value. This is not what it's going to cost, but let's talk through it a little bit. By the way, you'll also get these tools, the goal setting templates. I showed you one before, an activity log, which I referenced earlier, the urgent important matrix, which I showed you before, a stress management ebook, which you see right here on the left side. These are all examples of tools that you get as part of participating in this masterclass. Okay. And with these tools, what are you going to be able to do immediately? Number one, start organizing your day to be more productive. Number two, learn how to manage and alleviate the symptoms of stress so that you could feel more energetic, feel healthier. Carve out more of the me and we time that we all desperately crave. Be able to get rid of this feeling of being overworked and never have time, not dealing with all the stressful situations when they come up, not being able to go home and do the things that you love that light you up. All right. And the beauty is I've done all of the research. I spent many years studying and experimenting so that you don't have to. Everything is laid out. Everything is clear. And I'm sharing you from experience of someone who was able to get it done and do it with success. And that's the beauty of it. So often we pay for on-demand solutions. Other people do all the work. But when somebody presents that solution to you, think of all the time it's saving you in the present and in the future, not just the time, the quality of the time. All right. Now, just a few questions before we wrap up. Number one, if all the masterclass did was to show you exactly how to get control of your day and to start managing your time so that it works for you and not the other way around, would it be worth $29.95 to you? Again, every day of your life for the rest of your life, you now have control of your day forever. And please use the chat here. Would it be worth it for you to be able to spend that money to get that result? If all it did was to give you a few hours extra back per week to spend on what's most important, remember, not just today, not just this week, for the rest of your life, would an investment like this be worthwhile? And I hope that you are saying yes to yourself. I don't see it in the chat, yes, but I hope that you understand why this would be worthwhile. Thank you, Barry. I agree. It's 100% for sure. If the masterclass, if all it did was to show you how to expertly and regularly delegate less important tasks to your colleagues so that you could work on what was most important that will scale your business, improve your organization, improve student performance, whatever your metrics are that are important to you, would it be worth this investment of $29.95? And the last question, if all the masterclass did was to allow you to spend more time each evening with the people you love or doing things that are important to you for the rest of your life, you would own your weekends, you'd own your evenings, you would just feel in control again. Would it be worth an investment of $29.95? And the beauty is that even though the value I've established at $29.95, the normal asking price for such an offer is $8.97. Yet, because you've showed up today and you've decided to make the time, you've invested in yourself so that you could be a better and more effective leader, I am offering this special masterclass for webinar viewers only, just for the price of $97. And I just want to share with you before I forget, bear with me for a moment as I quickly pull up for you the link here, because I want you to get there. All right. So this $97 is going to drop it in the chat so you can see it and you can go there. It'll come up in an email soon, but I really hope that everybody clicks on this right away. Just get it open in your browser. So that's one offer I just want to make for you. And then there's a special other one, which I believe very possibly you'll be able to get to. And this, by the way, is a deeper offer. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. Okay, so there's the masterclass. It's the on-demand component that I've been describing, all of these components where you have recordings, you have all the information, $97, you do it at your convenience. Okay. I will tell you that second link that I shared with you is the opportunity to review it with me live, and not even webinar style, in real coaching format, where you're present, where you're visible on the screen, where we're actually having conversation, walking through the PowerPoints, walking through the content, but doing it with questions, with answers, with real discussion. And that also is a very significant high-end offer that I've reduced significantly in price in order to make that an option for you as well. Okay, so let's quickly review and wrap up. Number one, you've got two choices. Either you're going to continue to struggle to get your basic tasks done, to not waste time putting out fires, to understand how and when to delegate tasks, to find enough time to focus on your personal life, right? These are things we struggle with. These are the reasons you came here. And this is one option. You can continue to do what you've been doing until now. Or you spend the $97, which you can use that money for a couple of shirts, a kitchen appliance. I mean, you know what $97 will buy, especially in today's environment, right? And finally take back control of your time and your life. Those are your choices. It's one or the other. And the beauty is that there's a money back guarantee. So if you chose, for example, you didn't see the value in it, even though I'm pretty sure you will see 10 times the value in it, I will give you your money back, guaranteed, no questions asked. So here's the question. Is it worth risking a few hours, because it will take some time to learn, and a few dollars, the 97 that I mentioned before, to check this out, right? Even if it only does half of what I've claimed, I think it's going to pay for itself within a week, right? You cannot put a price to your time. And therefore, what you're going to get, a quick review, you'll get the entire masterclass with the 5 modules, a wealth of tools and templates, including all of the ones listed on the right, a value of almost $3,000, right, which regularly is priced at $900, okay, all for just $97. And the time to act is now. Don't let another day pass by without full control of your life and your time. It's time to start living a more balanced, organized, and productive life. Don't miss this unique opportunity to learn the skills that you need. I sent you the link. Click on it, follow it, take a few minutes there. And I really do hope that you will participate because I think it's going to be transformative. I want to take this opportunity before you go. Please use the chat and share with me what your primary wins are. You're certainly welcome to share as well if you plan on taking that step with the masterclass and purchasing it and learning more. I would love to hear from you. And in the meantime, I'm going to wrap up the recording and simply say thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for everything that you've contributed thus far. And I really hope that you will take these next steps to achieve that next level of success that you richly deserve. So thank you again. Have a fantastic day and much continued success.